Good afternoon and welcome to World News Now. My name is Remy Arlen. Ondo State Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu has Nigerians have been alerted to the fact that age is a major factor responsible for the cause of Parkinson's disease. This is a factor identified by the Academic Physiotherapists of Nigeria. President of the association, Dr. Udoka Okafor, spoke on the 7th Annual Scientific Conference held at the University of Medical Sciences, UNIMED, Ondo.
But for Parkinson's disease, which is an ailment responsible for the shaking of the body, the cause has been attributed to age. Responsible for Parkinson was identified by the Association of Clinical and Academic Physiotherapists of Nigeria at the opening ceremony of the 7th Annual Scientific Conference held at the University of Medical Sciences, UNIMED, Ondo. According to the president of the association, Dr. Doka Okafor, Parkinson's disease is different from stroke and that it is a neurological condition that can limit physiotherapy. The situation, which he described as a great challenge in fighting neurological conditions.
I truly think that we should have partnership. Let the council to work. Let there be a great for me in doing what
Note address, Professor Latokunbo Olaogun said Parkinson can be inherited as research shows that people living in blacksmithing area or drink contaminated water have Parkinson's disease. Professor Olaogun, however, suggested regular exercise as panacea while urging people to report cases of burning and to the nearest physiotherapist. Sahid Aribisala, Osrc News.
Ondo State House of Assembly has charged the State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA, to effectively harness interrelationship with other sister agencies to reduce the impact of disasters. Members of House Committee on SDGs, Intergovernmental Affairs and Multilateral Relations, led by its chairman, Tiamiyu Atere, during a visit to the agency, advised management on periodic report to the relevant ministry and agencies to alert them in order to ensure preparedness. House of Assembly correspondent Omoshiliola Adesoyajayi reports.
The visit of members of Ondo State House of Assembly Committee on SDGs, Intergovernmental Affairs and Multilateral Relations to the management of State Emergency Agency SEMA was one of numerous ways to chart the way forward towards managing disasters in the state. Chairman of the committee, Mr. Tiamiyu Atere, who admitted that some disasters are man-induced, promised that the House will review the law of the agency to ameliorate victims' challenges and be more effective in the discharge of its duties.
We thank you for what you have been doing. With the list of the community, all this SEMA has shown their emergency assistance to. So with this, we have no reason not to support this agency.
Other lawmakers commended the agency for demonstrating commitment, advising the management to intensify efforts, especially in terms of advocacy to reduce disaster to the barest minimum in the state.
Your workers on field, your officers on field, they are doing well. And, I also wanted my chairman of this committee to note that they respond promptly and they are so amiable and accessible.
The administration of Oluwarotimi Akeredolu has been wonderful in the area of intervention when it comes to emergency progress.
Earlier, the executive secretary of the agency, Mr. Ojoidowu, attributed frequent flooding being experienced in some parts of the state to indiscriminate waste disposal and called for the collaboration of the lawmakers in the advocacy in their constituencies to save lives and property.
We have been advocating and sensitizing people to live, to have a culture that can avert some of these disasters, particularly erosion. The way we dump refuse, at different places that will clog our, waterways and drainages is not encouraging. And if we, as as the public can, really do what is right, we will reduce some of these disasters. So this we have been doing on radio, sensitizing our people. Then our local people too, the way they respond sometimes encouraging.
The state emergency agency is one of the departments under the office of the deputy governor, whose core mandate is to manage disasters through coordination of resources, decision. Moshi Adesoya Ajayi, O News.
An ad hoc committee to approve the expenditure of 11.35 trillion naira on the turnaround maintenance term of the country's refineries by the federal government over a 30 from 2010 to 2023. This was sequel to a motion sponsored by Senator representing Kogi West APC to conduct investigations in conjunction with the Senate Committee on Downstream. Deputy Senate President Jibrin Baro, who presided over plenary, demanded that all those who are taking money meant for the term should be made to give account. The committee was given 4 weeks to submit its report. Organized labor has expressed dissatisfaction with what it describes as the slow pace of implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding it signed with the federal government to avert its planned nationwide strike. The Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) and the Trade Union Congress said failure to implement the agreement before the October 30 deadline might leave them with no choice but to down tools. The head of Information and Public Affairs of the NLC, Benson Upa, said government could do better and faster after the signing of the MOU. The national leadership of the NLC and TUC had on October 1 reached an agreement with the federal government to pay 35,000 naira to all federal workers beginning from September, pending when a new national minimum wage would be signed into law. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency has predicted dust haze and cloudiness from Wednesday 25th to Friday 27th October 2023 across the country. NIMET's weather outlook released on Tuesday in Abuja predicted dust haze on Wednesday over the northern region with a visibility range of 2 kilometers to 5 kilometers, especially in a few states like Kano, Kaduna, and Jigawa during the forecast period. The agency said sunny spells with few patches of clouds were anticipated over the north-central during the morning hours. The atmosphere over the southern parts of the country should be cloudy with intervals of sunshine, while morning thunderstorms are anticipated over Lagos, Delta, Rivers, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom states. The agency predicted isolated thunderstorms over parts of Ondo, Edo, Abia, Enugu, Anambra, Lagos, Bayelsa, Delta, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, and Cross River states. The agency advised the public to take necessary precautions due to dust particles in suspension over the atmosphere. It added that individuals with respiratory ailments are to protect themselves as the current dusty weather condition is adverse to their health. The Al-Shifa Hospital, the biggest in Gaza Strip, is running out of fuel and space as Israel escalates ahead of the ground. Without
there have been 600 people killed and almost three times the number of wounded. All of them have come to Shifa Hospital. The crisis at Shifa Hospital just keeps getting deeper and deeper. The fuel is running low. We are getting more and more electricity cutouts. Yesterday, one of the biggest hospitals in the north of Gaza has completely run out of fuel, which itself adds to the pressures on Shifa Hospital. My estimate is that the hospital will cease to be able to function by within a week.
I pulled all the kids from wherever they were, some of them barefoot, some of them not dressed properly, some screaming and shouting because of the bombs. Thank God we made it to the hospital.
The situation we're in now, everything has changed. I wake up in the morning, sleeping on the sand. Everywhere is sand. Seriously, I'm in a situation in which I hope to go back home. I want to sleep in my bed.
United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has renewed his demand for a ceasefire in Gaza and said international law was being violated in the war between Israel and Palestine groups. Israel has bombarded the Gaza Strip relentlessly since October 7 when Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, killing at least 1,400 people, according to Israeli authorities. Guterres, speaking before the 15-member UN Security Council, pleaded for civilians and warned that the fighting risks a wider conflagration in the region. Guterres also criticized Israel without naming it, saying protecting civilians does not mean ordering more than 1 million people to evacuate to the south, where there is no shelter, food, no medicine, and fuel. The UN chief called the attack as horrifying and unprecedented and appealed for an immediate ceasefire. Kemisola Ojomo reports.
The horrors of the war on Gaza unfold this in the Security Council with urgent calls to help civilians on both sides, front and center. The UN Secretary General says it is not enough to blame Hamas.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation.
The comments unacceptable Israel, who demanded his resignation, but Russia, the UAE among many council members, calling for an immediate ceasefire, a call that was not absent from the draft resolution. The US
The key point here is the need for a swift ceasefire. The fact that it was not included in the Council draft was a step in the wrong direction and could be interpreted as Council's support for Israel's plan to conduct a ground offensive in Gaza.
To put to a vote. Russia countered the US with its own ceasefire resolution, while the UAE and other Arab states said the only hope is a two solution.
We're facing a spiral of violence, a war based on despair over decades of occupation, injustice and oppression. Innocent people are being killed.
The US says to get aid into Gaza, while blaming Iran and its proxies for fueling the conflict.
If Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people. We will defend our security swiftly and decisively.
Iran's ambassador accuses the United States of exacerbating the conflict by overtly aligning itself with Israel. Kemisola Ojomo, Osrc News.
In the meantime, French President Macron suggested that the international coalition brought together to fight ISIL should be broadened. Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem on Tuesday, Macron offered solidarity in the aftermath of a deadly attack by Hamas on October 7 and said France and Israel share a common enemy in defeating terrorism. Macron's visit comes more than 2 weeks after Hamas members stormed into Israel, killing at least 1,400 people, mostly civilians, including about 30 French citizens. Israel has since relentlessly bombarded Gaza so far, killing more than 5,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children, while it prepares for a ground invasion of the blockaded area. The Israeli leader reiterated that Hamas would be destroyed in the continuing war and that after the fighting, no one would live under Hamas tyranny. Netanyahu also warned that the war might take time. Wahab Bankole has details.
It wasn't just a show of support for Israel's prime minister. It was in effect a call to arms. French President Emmanuel Macron suggested taking joint international coalition against Hamas.
C'est pourquoi la France est prête.
This is why France is ready for the international coalition against ISIL, within the framework of which we are engaged for our operation in Iraq and Syria.
In Rallah, he reiterated his call to treat Hamas like ISIL. The statement was more sympathy than action, with no plans for a ceasefire or humanitarian corridor, two immediate demands of the Palestinians.
I want to express my condolences to all the victims of the spiral of the violence unleashed by Hamas, to the families of the wounded and those who lost their loved ones in Gaza. Our hearts are with them.
During the meeting, protesters took to the streets, angry that Abbas will even meet with the French leader. Wahab Bankole, Osrc News.
John Kirby told the reporters that civilians will get hurt in Gaza as Israel stepped up its air campaign and a looming ground invasion during a press briefing on Tuesday. And he quote, "This is war. It is ugly, and it's going to be messy."
This is war. It is combat. It is bloody. It is ugly, and it's going to be messy. But it is going to happen, and that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it dismissible. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to still express concerns about that and do everything we can to help the Israelis do everything they can to minimize it. But that's unfortunately the nature of conflict. All I can tell you is we're going to continue to make sure Israel has the tools and the capabilities that they need to defend themselves. We're going to continue to try to get that humanitarian assistance in. We're going to continue to try to get hostages and people out of Gaza appropriately. And as I think you've heard us say, a ceasefire right now really only benefits Hamas. That's where we are right now. And I understand the question, but I'm just not going to get ahead of where things are.
Hong Kong leader John Lee said the Chinese territory will tell 2020 years post-inflation estimated freedoms. Who was security chief during the 2019 protests said the government was pressing ahead with effective legislative options on security and will be completed in 2024 to fulfill duty. Beijing's security law has all but stamped out criticism, with pro-democracy politicians into exile and civil society groups and critical media outlets shut down. Successive administrations, with the last attempt abandoned in 3. Traveling U.S. soldier who ran into North Korea in July, U.S. custody and headed home after being expelled by North Korea into China. While details about the diplomacy that led to King's transfer remained scarce, The development was a mere example of cooperation between the United States of Korea and China. King made a sudden dash into North Korea from the south on July. Border and was immediately taken into North Korean custody. Akintunde Akeshemola has detail. We sincerely apologize for that. This is where we'll conclude World News Now. Many thanks for watching. Good afternoon.